Cheers guys, I'm the Tech Prepper, hope you're all doing well. I picked up this Yaesu FT-897D a couple weeks ago at a local ham fest, and the big question I get is why I bought a radio that is almost 20 years old and discontinued. Well, I've got good reason for it. I'm going to share some of those reasons on how I select my gear, what features I look for. In fact, we're going to look at a handful of radios that I use every single day, and also some other gear like HTs and maybe even a laptop. And again, these are just my personal views on how I select my gear. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I am no expert in anything, but I do know what I like and I look for. So if you guys are on board with why I picked this gear for emergency communications, SHTF, and general preparedness, stick around. All right, before we get started, I think some context here is important. I look at radio as really living in two camps. On one side, we have amateur radio and a really rich tradition of exploration, tinkering, and that's where a lot of the innovation occurs. On the other side, we have the practical real-world applications and what I like to call duty use. That is the camp that I tend to fall under when looking at my radio selection criteria. Now, I think it's important to note that I look at radios as tools, and not every tool is appropriate for every job. So when people ask me what radio should I get, I can't answer that question for you. What I can share with you is why I pick the radios that I do. And again, my choices or my selections for radios are based on my requirements and my operating environment. I'm getting into radio for the purpose of being generally prepared for emergency scenarios like inclement weather, natural disasters, or full-blown SHTF. In order to train properly for those scenarios, I need to do quite a bit of work on my end, so I tend to look to opportunities to participate in public service events out in the wilderness. I tend to do a lot of operation out in the field with a full rucksack with my radio gear, engaging either summits on the air activation or just doing like no random contacts out in the field. So the fact that I'm operating out in the elements, out in the Sonoran Desert where we have temperature swings of close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit per year, up to about 118 degrees in the summer, and right now anywhere from mid-20s to 30s and 40s. So my gear selections are very much geared around operating in kind of those hostile-ish environments. So your needs may be different. Okay, with that context out of the way, let's take a look at 5 things I look for. First is reliability, ruggedness, simplicity, portability, and then versatility. Let's take a look at each one. All right, so let's take a look at reliability, and I think the best indicator for that is time on market. I subscribe to the philosophy that new is the enemy of good. And while you miss out in a lot of like innovation and new features, for what I like to do, the older radios do everything I need them to do. And I prefer a proven track record that has taken place over 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. So the 897D, still a fantastic rig in my opinion, does everything I need it to do, and has been not on the market, but it's been around for 20 years, and they can still be had in good condition. My Yaesu VX6, which is my new everyday carrier radio that I've talked about on the channel, and my older Yaesu FT-60 are about 15 years old and still in active production. And these are very much the workhorse radios I see at public service events out in the field where it matters. So reliability is absolutely number one, and I believe time is the best indicator. All right, so number 2 on my list is ruggedness, and that is a personal requirement given that I like to run around in the national forest behind the house. I trail run every day with either my VX6 or my FT-270. Now, I've talked about the VX6 on the channel quite a bit, but not so much the 270. The VX6 is a fantastic radio for general preparedness, but I had an issue with it on the receive side of it, mostly because it is so wide-banded in terms of its receive. And sometimes I only need to work one band, like 2 meters, and the 270 is a monoband rig. Now the cool thing about this is that it's IP67 rated like the VX6, but it also runs the same batteries as my older EDC radio, which was the FT-60. So I have plenty of batteries for these guys. I'm not going to make a firearm magazine analogy here, but I guess I did. The cool thing about the 270 is that it comes out of an era that is long past us, and that's when Yaesu was partnered with with Vertex Standard. Vertex Standard went off to do things with Motorola, but the 897D is also from that period of when Yaesu was partnered with Vertex Standard, and it shows in the design considerations around ruggedness. So IP67 rated, everything has gaskets and seals, case construction very solid. I can drop this thing and have dropped this many times at anywhere from 5 miles an hour to 7 miles an hour and having it land on rocks, and the damn thing still keeps going. So the 897D, I mean, this case is absolutely solid. The fact that they overbuilt this handle is a good testament of why we need to go back to this style of manufacturing. Now, there's also some cool design considerations I found that has long passed us by, and that's modularity. The 897D has a module on the back, so you can either go with a power supply module, which I've never had the luxury of having a power supply ever, and it's actually nice to be able to plug this unit into 110 main and have it be able to run no problem. But this module will actually come out and you can put 2, I believe, NiCad batteries in there and run it off batteries. So very versatile rig, very well built, very high construction, and there is nothing like ruggedness in my opinion. We'll get maybe into the CF20 Toughbook, but you can see where my mind is, and I'll talk about why, again, 2008 era device, why it appeals to me, and it's really the rugged factor. So number 3 on my list is simplicity, and that's what really drew me to my first real everyday carry radio, and that was the FT-60. The front panel programming on this, if you guys have ever used it, in my opinion, is one of the easiest ones on the market. It's very simple to program a repeater in the field with almost no effort whatsoever. And the same thing applies to the 270 is a pretty much a one-to-one translation, as is the VX6R. On a similar note, my man packs and my new Shack in the Box have something in common that dovetails with simplicity. So the radio that I use most often in the field is my FT-818ND man pack. And this is a newer radio, but its predecessor, the 817, has been around for, I want to say, 15 years or about a decade. The 817 is discontinued, but the 818 is still in active production. But the bottom line is the menu system on this 818 is the same thing as its bigger brother, the 857D. And the 857D is an exact translation in terms of the menu system and controls of the 897D. That is the reason why when I saw this at the Handfest for 450 bucks, I said, this thing is reliable, it's still working, it's rugged, and it's simple to use. It has the same controls and interface, and under a high stress environment, I know that I can use all 3 of these radios and not have it be a big deal. Now the big question is, why would I want 3 radios? Well, when I go man portable, when I go hiking on the weekends, I take my HT and I bring my smaller 818ND man pack, and between these 2 I have basically anywhere from community level comms all the way across the globe. Now if I need more power and I don't mind carrying a little bit more weight, I will transition to carrying the 857D. This one's a little bit of a pain to carry around in a pack if I'm with a group. This one actually does make a lot more sense because I can offload some of my gear to members in the group. The 897D is not something I plan to carry man portable, but is something that I plan to use exclusively at the shack, both for VHF, UHF, and HF on voice and digital modes. But this is also something that I would probably bring with me in the Jeep and in the RV. So it gives me lots of options. So, oh, hold on a second. Before we leave simplicity, the other great thing about this era of kind of design is that the components and parts are interchangeable. So they all use the same RJ45 interface for the mic. So I have 3 microphones that are identical. So if any one fails, I can go ahead and swap them out. If you open up all 3 of these radios, you'll find that the mechanical filters are all the same. So if I have a Collins SSB filter on the 818, I can go ahead and put it in the 897 or the 857D. I'm also doing a lot of work these days with digital, and specifically the DigiRig. Well, the cat control interface and the data port all use the same cables. So I quite literally have 3 DigiRigs with 3 DigiRig 8XX cables, and they work across here. So you can actually see there's one mounted right here, and the 818 Manpack has a DigiRig mounted on the inside. So I know people on this channel, especially the hamsters, I don't know what's wrong with you guys sometimes, but you don't subscribe to the philosophy that 2 is 1, 1 is none. Well, in this case, I personally like having 3 sets of the DigiRig, the cable, the microphone, the filters, just in case. So really great to have a simple design whereby we have standards across all the gear. All right, so we touched on number 4 just a little bit, and that is portability. Again, my personal requirements are to be a man-portable operator, and I like the ability to transition from the shack to the vehicle to being man-portable. And all 3 of these radios fit that bill. So when I don't need a whole lot of power, and 5 watts will do, or 6 watts technically, I will take the 818, and this thing comes in at about 8.5 pounds all in, with all the gear, batteries included, antenna systems, you name it, frames. The 897D is also usable at the shack, in the vehicle, and man-portable if I want to have the additional space and weight. Now, even though the 897D comes in at over 8 pounds, you can see that this is still fairly portable. If I had to leave the house, let's say that there was a wildfire, which we had last summer or the summer before last, I can take this full shack rig pretty easily. It's not the kind of thing I would want to carry on foot, but for me, the ability to move all my gear where I need to go is one of the things I look for. All right, number 5 is versatility, and I'm going to boil this one to really just one dimension, and that is going to be rigs with all band, all mode capabilities. So the FT-818ND, the 857D, and the 897D meet that criteria. They're all capable of operating on UHF, VHF, 6 meters, HF, and they're capable of operating on all modes: single sideband, AM, FM, CW, and digital. So you have a lot of versatility in terms of your communications abilities. So I can do voice, and when paired with the DigiRig Mobile, I can do digital data modes. So for me, I look at these as being a Swiss Army knife of radio operations at my disposal. So really cool stuff. And again, I think I mentioned it in probably the Manpack series. If I were hard pressed to only have one radio, period, HTs included, what would it be? And today, it still would be the Yaesu FT-818ND. These are still in active production. Like I said, they're all band, all mode. The only caveat is that you're limited to 6 watts. I'm on the fence because sometimes you do need more power, but the more and more that I'm getting into training, I'm actually finding that for my personal needs for localized MCOM use from my community, city, county, state, and region, I'm actually having pretty much close to 90% success making targeted contacts with the 818. If you can find the 857, definitely pick one up. Basically, it does everything the 818 will do with more power, but these are getting increasingly more difficult to find, and I think right now they're commanding a price point on the secondary market of about $1,000. The 897, for those of you guys who don't need to go portable, if you can find these ones, this is a good alternative to the 857D, mostly because I don't think people are as hot and they haven't achieved the status of that $1,000 price point. So I'm finding now online that you can have these for anywhere from about $450 to $650. I know after this video prices may change. But that also leads me to some tips for you guys. I keep on hearing, where do I source these? Well, I really hate eBay. eBay has very inflated prices and your mileage will vary there. If you need to go online, I've had good luck on the classified section on QRZ.com. I have not tried eHam, so I can't talk about that. But personally, my number one recommendation is to do a search in your area for local hamfests. Get there as soon as they open. Make sure you have about at least $800 in cash and make the rounds real quickly. I can't tell you how many 857s I've seen in this past year. I already have one, and I didn't want to spend like another, $800 kind of price range on one. But it took me almost, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years to find an 897D. But I found this for $450 in excellent condition. The hamsters are very good about not ripping you off like the listings on eBay. So yeah, let's leave it. Those are my top 5 kind of dimensions I look for in terms of features, why I like Japanese radios like Yaesu, specifically those that came from the Vertex standard era. One last thing before we close, I hope I don't screw up this clip here. I did a video on why my platform, MCOM Tools, is geared around the Panasonic Toughbook. And it's really based on all of the themes I've talked about in this video. The CF20, hold on, let me clear stuff up and we'll talk about the CF20. All right, guys, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the Panasonic CF20 Toughbook, but I will tell you it is my favorite laptop for portable work. I've been using this now for about 14 months. It's been with me in the field, probably about 50 times already. And just like these radios, this is older technology. This is from 2008, but don't discount it. At least I am not going to discount it because it's still a 64-bit architecture. This model has 16 gigs of RAM, 4 CPUs. I have the built-in or the optional GPS module. It runs current versions of Linux very well, and it runs all of the amateur radio software very well. It's a little bit more sluggish when compared to modern laptop, but again, modern laptops do not have this type of quality and construction. So really quickly, what I like about this, even though it is a 4-pound notebook, is that you can optionally turn this into a tablet and cut down the weight to 2 pounds. And what I love about this, even though this is a 2008 era, is that the screen on this works in full sunlight, and it works with gloved hands and with sweat and moisture. I cannot say that about other touchscreens today. It also allows for replaceable batteries, both in the tablet portion, but also in the dock. And the cool thing about that is that surplus batteries, old new stock, is still available. And you can double the life running the tablet with the dock. But the cool thing is when you're drawing power and you're docked, the power actually will exclusively use the dock first. So you can drain this down to, I think is like 1 or 2%, and then it'll start to draw from the tablet. So in the field, if you do need to undock, you are pretty much guaranteed to have as much available battery life in the tablet portion. It's also, I think, IP55 rated. It's not great, but you can spill like water and stuff on the keyboard. It works pretty well, assuming you've got all of the ports covered. So I'm finding it to be a very powerful platform for what I do in the field. In fact, my personal comms package literally is the FT-818 man pack with the DigiRig, the CF20, and a small antenna kit that allows me to do broadbanded communication. And with that, I can communicate on voice and digital data modes pretty much across the globe, all the way down to my community. So we're not going to get too much into the CF20 unless you guys want to see a full video of its capabilities, how I load it up with software, how I use it, maybe some demos in the field. But really the point here is that personally, I look at my selection of gear based on my personal requirements, the operating environment I'm going to be in, and more than anything, I don't discount old. I think there's value in things that have come from an era that has long passed us, where reliability and solid engineering was at the core, where the product was designed to last a lifetime. I believe this idea of planned obsolescence, I always get that phrase incorrect, is something that is really destroying consumer goods these days. Everything now is replaceable, and there's an expectation that you replace your watch every 3 years because there's something new and better. Our software industry calls it knifing the baby, where you plan to kill your product every 3 years so you can sell some more stuff. So my preference, I like this older stuff, works for me. With that said, guys, I want to thank everybody on Buy Me a Coffee. I've got some real fantastic updates for you on MCOM tools. Specifically, MCOM tools, even though I said I wasn't going to do it, now works with the 818, the 857D, 897D, assuming you use the DigiRig, and just one more radio, and that is the Zygu X6100. All right, guys, catch you next time. Oh, be strong, be safe, be prepared.